and welcome to Student Voice. I'm Victoria Janiti. Midterm elections have come and gone, and aren't we glad? A historic number of female and minority candidates ran and many won, and the Democratic Party took control of the House of Representatives. What does this all mean for average citizens and for college students? Joining us today to discuss politics are Professor Liz Norrell, Alexander Cantrell, and Hannah Rollins.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, any big surprises and highlights from this year's election?
I think the biggest surprise for me was just that the results in Florida. So I know we're going to talk about that more, but what really surprised me is that the two Republicans were leading, and yet at the same time, the voters of Florida approved overwhelmingly a ballot initiative to return the right to vote to people after they've served a felony sentence. And to me, those two things are unexpected to happen at the same time. So I was really surprised by that.
Yes, I agree with Dr. Norrell's perspective on that. I think it's mostly right, but from what I experienced on election night to what we're seeing unravel is a little bit different. I mean, I think a lot of people because we do this, we put things, that happen in a bottle, so to say, and we capture them, and then, we're hard to move into new areas or whatever. But I think if you looked at what happened on election night, it's much different than what's happening right now. On election night, it was mostly what was predicted, House gains by the Democrats, but the Republicans mostly took control of the Senate. But now what we're seeing as, time goes on, the Senate isn't necessarily, it's still obviously in Republican majority, but they've got some gains. The Arizona victory just happened for the Democrats, Sinema, over McSally, and that has some further implications that may happen. McSally may end up, getting on to as well from what I've been reading. And so that's quite interesting. So what we can see is that it's in my estimation, it's a much bigger victory for Democrats than what was initially seen on election night. It was seen as a small trickle, a blimp in the radar, but actually if you look at it all encompassing, and I'm really big about the data, if you look at the data, it's actually a bigger, from votes, not necessarily seats won, but just votes. It's a bigger percentage victory than the 2010 red wave after Obama's election, which was a bloodbath, and Republicans like to say. But it was actually bigger if you look by percentage of votes. So I think that's incredibly impressive, and it comes off the 2016 election, which was pretty good for the Democrats, not for the executive, obviously, not in the presidential race, but in other races. I thought grounds were gained and everything like that in Texas, and even in a lot of areas where Trump did well in, there were gains by the Democratic Party. So I thought that was just really impressive, and it shows a turning of tide, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Hannah?
One of the biggest pleasant surprises that I got to experience from the election was seeing many women in majority, congresswomen, and just all of these people that are truly the picture of America start to fill our Congress. And it really makes me happy to start seeing the representation of all of the citizens in America put into our executive branches. It's really, really wonderful.
Yeah, that is. So what about the recounts? Will these be resolved soon?
Yeah, so there are still recounts going on in primarily Florida and also in Georgia. And in Florida, it's really interesting because after the election of 2000, which all of you are really young, this is where I get to be a professor, right? But in the election of 2000, we learned that Florida state law has a provision that says that if a candidate if the margin between the two candidates is lower than half of a percentage point, it's an automatic recount. And so Florida is going through that right now. And the big dilemma, the big question is whether or not it's going to proceed just by putting ballots back through the machines, or if they're going to do a hand recount. So for anyone who was alive in 2000, this is like deja vu all over again. And so I think they should finish pretty soon, but I suspect there's going to be a lot of litigation before that happens. In Georgia, who knows? I can't even begin to make a prediction what ultimately will happen there, although I think Brian Kemp will probably continue to be the winner in that race.
Yeah.
Now, I agree with everything she said, obviously, but the interesting thing that you want to look at, and I won't get into the politics, I have my own perspective, obviously, but I don't believe that that's what this show is about. But the weird thing about it is you see some noise from the top that, things may be rigged, whatever, but if these recounts just happen, which nothing extra has, been done from Democrats to bring about these recounts from happening. They're kicked in automatically. If they just happen, the Republicans are actually in all of the places, Florida, Georgia, whatever, they're actually in a pretty good place. I mean, the precedent going back years, the person who wins on election night generally never loses in a recount. I mean, how many times has it happened? I think the number is very small.
3.
Yeah,
I think
total.
3.
Yeah.
So really, just kind of, if you're the head honcho of the Republicans, just be quiet. Just keep your head under this, a little bit. I know that's incredibly hard, but that's all you have to do, literally. And you're looking good. When are we going to get these returns? On Thursday or something? They're going to make their decision.
That's the deadline in Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to figure all this things out, and it's likely going to be, it pains me to say, but it's likely going to be Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis. Yeah. And that's just what's going to happen. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there has been a lot of talk among the Republicans because the recount likely isn't going to be a turnover, but the lead is closing because with these recounts, there are more Democratic votes that are coming in, which our president has been very vocal about, saying that it is fraud and all these other things. So it's become a very vocal issue in many different branches of the government. So I'll be interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you feel about negative campaigning? Will this ever come back to haunt the candidates once elected?
So what I can tell you is that there's plenty of research that shows that negative campaign ads work, and that they educate voters more than positive campaign ads. So when you have a positive ad, it's like, oh, I'm with my kids and my dog and everyone loves me and I'm a great person. You don't really learn much from that because everyone's family, well, not everyone, but they pretend to when you're running for office, pretend to like you. But from a negative ad, you find out often how people have voted, what stances they've taken, and so they're educational. But I think that what political scientists have noticed is that we're getting away from educational negative ads to really just character assassination and, honestly, untruths. Yeah. And so I don't know that it's going to come back to hurt them later. I am worried about the direction that we're going with negative ads.
Yeah, right. I made a lot of notes from that, but the biggest thing I have known is that mudslinging is a part of politics. It just is. We all want to say that, we don't like it, but it is what I like about politics a little bit. I do like some of that. It's what makes it what it is. It would be like me watching football and they took out tackling, I mean, I don't want to watch that. That's flag football. Nobody wants to watch that. But, what I noticed in this election, on the Republican side, there was a level of vitriol and not necessarily just attack ads, but complete untruths. I mean, just complete things that were not factually correct, lobbed. And in the race, in the Arizona Senate Republican race, where Sinema was against McSally, you could see a striking difference and in a lot of the Democratic races, they didn't win all of them. In heavily contested Republican rural areas, they still got pretty soundly beat. But in that race in particular, which is turning to a purple state, which is quite surprising to anybody who follows politics, McSally stuck to a moderate, reserved, less attack-focused message, and she ended up pulling out a very close victory. McSally went hard with the Trump side, attacked, and was vicious, and then did a weird kind of 180 at the very end to kind of save face, a little concession video that was very cute dog. But I just, I just think it was a little maybe disingenuous. I don't know. But that's my thoughts on it, basically.
When in doubt, bring out a dog.
Yeah,
that's what we've learned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have found that I come to respect candidates more when they're more upfront and honest about what their platform is. So when they're actually discussing what it is they want to do in office and how they're going to serve their constituents, I find that I tend to listen to them more rather than the ads that come on with this dramatic music and all of these like tinted videos of the other party's candidate. And I do think that obviously mudslinging is a part of politics. It wouldn't be what it is today if we didn't have a little bit of that. But I think we are moving away from the facts. And rather than exposing another party with these attacking messages, we're kind of just making it a jumble of nonsense in our political discourse, which is making things very difficult for the American citizens. So I think if we can move forward more with not necessarily eliminating attacking, but focusing more on your own party and your own platform and how are you going to best serve your constituents.
Right, absolutely.
I wish we could live in a world where people would watch that.
Yes, yeah, that's the problem.
It's kind of to your point.
Right, we're not all robots. We live with a little passion.
There's a little
Yes,
emotion there.
all the time.
Well, for the coverage of the political process, where can you get news from where you can trust?
Hannah, you want to start with that one?
Oh, okay. We're in a very interesting spot with news coverage in our country at the moment. And basically all of our major news networks have become affiliated with a certain party, whether on their own or because President Trump has kind of decreed that they have this political alliance. So the problem is a lot of people will only read news from the news outlets that ally with their own party. But the problem with that is that they're only getting one side of the story. I find that when I'm in elections, I typically try to watch the local news because it is focused on kind of your community and not officially politically affiliated. So you're kind of getting a broader sense. I know when I was trying to research and figure out who I was going to vote for governor, I was looking at articles from the Tennessean as early as July and figuring out what their platforms were, looking at their comments from different debates. So kind of focusing on local news for local elections is a really good thing. And take a look at it for national elections, but I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is to read multiple stories from multiple different outlets and really look at it with a critical eye. Because we're all human, we all have biases. But regardless of the political party, I think you need to look critically at every piece of information you're given.
Yeah, I would obviously agree. That was very well said.
Thank you.
You're welcome with everything you said. But it's about getting, we do all have biases, and as people in the media, whether it be CNN or whatever, any journalist that's writing any form of media, they try to come off as unbiased as possible, even though everyone does have a bias. So, you just have to go into it kind of knowing that. And you have to look at the network's interests and what they believe in, and every network is biased a certain way. And I think that the big media companies, the way that they're run is important to knowing what they believe in. They're trying to do a lot of stuff, and I don't envy them because they're trying to sell airtime, they're trying to inform, they're trying to stay unbiased, they're trying to not be sensational, but they fail in all these in certain ways. And that's just because they have an impossible task to do all of these, hit all of these goals, and also, do hard-hitting journalism at the same time. I think it's possible, but we've definitely left the golden era of a Walter Cronkite, I would say, for sure. We're not getting that same level, and that's led to the distrust of the media and journalism from Americans. From that time period, it's gone down fairly drastically, in my estimation. And my final point is just check your stories, sources, check their validity, check many things. Just, we're only human, just like going off of what she said, consume as much information as possible, and at the end of the day, you come up with your own point of view on that, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I'm going to give some really practical suggestions,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
NPR or PBS NewsHour. There's a really great chart. It's the media bias chart. If you Google media bias chart, you'll find it. And it has kind of different levels of trustworthiness. And in the center at the top, there's a green box that's straight news reporting. Those are the sources, and they range. Some of them lean left, some of them lean right. But if you stay in that green box, I think you're doing pretty well. So the advice that I give is diversify, right? You should never believe any single source. But when you're hearing the same thing from the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and NPR, then it's probably pretty trustworthy.
Yeah, so check your sources. So what would you say to anyone who would maybe feel different or didn't vote or feels discouraged about the state of politics in our country?
Okay, well, I can say I'm a collegiate high student at Chattanooga State right now, and I just recently turned 18. So the first time I was able to vote was in this midterm election. I was so excited. That was the biggest thing that made me excited about turning 18, was that my voice was finally going to be valued on a national level. And so my feelings on this are very extreme, because I just came from the point in my life where I was invested, I was paying attention, I was educated, and I really cared about our government and our country, but there was nothing I could do. I could protest, I could post anything I wanted on social media, but when it came down to it, I couldn't vote because I was underage. So I'm really passionate about telling people to get out and vote, because it is a civic responsibility, and the fact that you have the ability to vote is such a blessing, and you're so lucky to have it, because for every one person that can vote, there are so many people behind them who can't. So I think using your voice, regardless of political affiliation or what you believe, putting your voice out there to help make the world a better place. Because ultimately, regardless of whether we're Republican or Democrat or Libertarian, we're all trying to make this country the best it can be. So I think the most important thing you can do in this country, and the most patriotic thing you can do, is go vote. So absolutely, regardless if you're discouraged or you just are done with the entire system, please go out and vote, because that's the only way we're going to make things better.
I kind of want to go vote right now. Yeah.
Thanks.
That was a really impassioned speech, Feeling very patriotic right now. But it is hugely important. But, and I don't want to take a contrarian's perspective, but I, as a ripened old 25-year-old man, I see you, so much youthful optimism. But I feel the frustration of people. I've voted, but I feel people that are very frustrated with the political process. I've been from both sides. I'm, an unabashed liberal, obviously, but I don't feel any shame in saying that. But I felt very frustrated with what the system has been giving us, the underrepresentation from our government of the people in this country, and it's not necessarily just one party's fault. It's just, maybe it's our founding fathers' fault, I don't know, but it's just the way things have set up and the way things have evolved, and unfortunately I don't think it's given us full democratic coverage in our government, but that's something that I don't think we'll ever reach. But the huge part that we can control is you have the right to vote. You can go vote if you fall under certain criteria. Now in Florida, some more criteria, but you have that ability. And I'm a strong Democratic believer, and I think whoever you are, if you're not as knowledgeable, whatever, that doesn't matter to me. I believe in the entirety majority opinion, and I feel that gives us the best results most of the time. So if we had 100% participation, if we had things that automatically signed up people to vote as soon as they turned 18, some countries even fine their citizens, which I think that is a little crazy, but that's a little too much. I still have a little bit of a libertarian lean in me that won't accept that, but you can do something or not if you don't want to. But just get involved, at least vote, so we can say if we had more, more like 60 to 80% involvement in the political process, we could at least say, hey, we're getting what we're putting out, because they're serving all of America. They don't just serve the people who vote.
I want to believe that the people who serve in government serve everyone and not just the people who vote. But I think decisions are made by the people who show up. And that's really trite, but it's true. Elected officials pay attention to the people who have the power to fire them. And those are the people who bother to show up. So yes, I feel the discouragement. I feel the frustration. But we have government that works really well for wealthy old people, because they're the ones who show up and vote.
Yes.
And if less wealthy, less old people voted, we would have government that works well for them too. So never underestimate that power. Yeah.
Never underestimate your own power to vote and make a difference. So, well, that's it for this episode of Student Voice. For more information about political science classes here, go to chattanoogastate.edu and click on academics. Have a great day.